next with whatever they've got. Noah, Mike?
You could let Mike go, because actually maybe my game will tie into how tough it is to finish off a game.
All right.
You can definitely speak on that.
I yield my time to the good gentleman from Wisconsin, or wherever Mike is.
Indiana. That's where I'm from.
Indiana.
And Mike's way too prolific to claim, I have a hard time finishing my games.
Yeah. I just put a link in the side that you can see, but basically this isn't an app. It's a one-page website template that I created that people can purchase. I had this idea years ago, and when I was starting to kind of create my own website, and I had saw different people post talking about, them creating a website for their app, and they didn't really know how to do websites, or what's the best way to do it, or what they should do or not do for their website, and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of had this idea that wouldn't it be cool, just on the very low end, just kind of as an entry point, entry level baseline, is to make it super simple by just pulling the information that you load into iTunes for your app. And that's it. Just grabs all the information from iTunes and creates the the one-page website from that. So that's what I created. And if you do the view demo, down on the left there. So it's basically every 3 days it'll go out. It keeps track and says, and pulls down the latest and greatest, if anything changed. And it just basically pulls all the information. So it's like, I thought, wouldn't this be great? Because it's like, for a lot of people, they don't maybe want to deal with, they don't want any more information than this. So I basically just iTunes allows you to pull information. Obviously they don't guarantee the speed of, or whatever that you can get to it, but I cache it on your website. So it's really simple. It's basically one file that you, at the very base level, all you have to do is enter your app ID, and it'll create this one-page website from that and all the links. Alternatively, you can also add your Google, if you also have it on Google Play and Amazon, you can put those in, and then it'll show those buttons. In the upper left-hand corner, if you scroll back up, you'll see there's that link that automatically gets created that launches another page that shows all your apps on iTunes. That's something they provide. It'll show all the developers' apps, which is kind of cool. And, I tried to hit all the bases, like hit the sharing stuff for social stuff. On this game, I don't typically do any other languages, but at the bottom, there would be, if it was an app that did multiple languages, there's a place where you could actually put those in, the country codes for those, and then links for those would show up, so people could see, click on them and then go to that information. So, it's not necessarily anything special, but I think it's geared towards apps. It's professional looking, I think, and, drop dead simple. If you don't want to put any time and energy into something, you can get, your basic web hosting package out there, buy this for $20, put your app ID in it, and you're on your way.
So I have a couple questions. One is, can you customize the color scheme?
Right now, I don't have any way to do that. I was the first out of the gate. I just said I'm just going to keep it really simple. I'm just going to have it this kind of gray theme. I had entertained the idea of having like a login backend where you could maybe do some of that basic stuff and enter a couple things.
Yeah. What about YouTube video? If I have a YouTube video,
if it's not on iTunes, right now I'm not allowing that. But those are some of the things that I was hoping once I got this out there to see, even if there's any interest for people to do this, that they could start saying, oh, God, I'd like to add that. Or for that matter, if people bought it, they could edit that and add to the code and have it pull or have it linked to anything they want, really, once they get it.
And then I'm going to grill you here because I'm interested, not because I'm trying to find flaws.
Sure.
Is there, like, from an SEO perspective? I'm sure you're that kind of guy, right? So
yeah. So I tried to like on any of the tags. See, so this gets a little weird here. So this is interesting. Since I'm pulling the information. And this is multiple PHP files, and I might not get a response right away from iTunes, because sometimes it can either fail potentially, or it could take 5 seconds, 20 seconds, half a minute to get information sometimes if they're being hammered. So I had to, on the fly, if you actually scroll down on that page, you'll see that all the way down to the bottom, I guess it's not showing here. But basically, after the page loads, I update the page name. I push in a description, and I push in keywords that are based on the name of your game. So I try to do some basic stuff. Now, so what's weird is so if you drill down through here, you should start to see some of it, but it doesn't show up when you look at the basic code. It's like I think it has something to do with the DOM that doesn't, in these editors, they don't update it here, but in the actual, you can see right there that there's a JavaScript that actually pushes the information and updates the description and the keywords on the fly. So my understanding is Google would pull that after the page totally loads, not like intermittent, like halfway through the page load.
Right. So what you're saying is you're doing a kind of a remote call to iTunes, and then you're taking that information that comes back, and then you're dynamically injecting it back into the page using JavaScript?
Right.
Okay.
In those areas that get loaded before the main content. The main content of the page, like the images, the sidebar, and the description, that gets loaded all at the same time. So that's going to be there. So you can see there the title is correct, right? But when you look at it, when you first looked at it, you didn't see that because it just said app website.
Yeah, I was looking over here in resources, which is a different view, and so maybe
right. So it's kind of weird. So my understanding is that, like Google, from an SEO standpoint, they'll actually look at what actually is the finished rendered, view of the code, not as it's being kind of built in halfway through.
And are you? You said you're doing this with PHP scripts. Is it being dynamically generated every time, or is it actually at some point being written out as a static HTML file that's sort of a finished product that gets delivered?
No, what happens is that it's PHP, and so what I do is I cache the files. So when you first, you update your file. If you would buy it, then you put your app ID in, put it to the server, go to the website, and the first time, then it pulls down all the information, and generates, puts everything where it should, and it caches it to your server. So it creates an images folder and puts all the images in there. And then every 3 days, if somebody comes back in 3 days and looks at it, if it's between now and 3 days, then it'll just look at the cached information. So let's say you have an app update. There's potential that there could be a 3-day lag, and when people see the new information, if you change the description or something. Now you can just go in and delete the folder that has that information in it, and then the next time you go to it, it'll cache those files again for you. And it also, what it does is that at the end of that 3 days, it looks, and it doesn't just automatically update it. It looks at, it pulls the information from iTunes, and then it says, it looks at the last time it was modified versus the current cached modified date. And if that didn't change, then it doesn't update it. But it will check every 3 days, the way I have it set up right now, to update and recache if that modified date has been changed.
Well, I think this is a great idea because, you know, like you said, this is something that when you're asked from iTunes, like, hey, what's your support site? You're like, well, I don't know. I mean, some people put it in Facebook, and some people, you know, go out and buy full-blown hosting and pop up a WordPress site. But, you know, this is certainly easier just by putting in your app ID and having it sort of generate everything for you. So
right. And then it gives you one place, you know, then you can just hone in on making the iTunes information the best it can be. And you don't have to create other, you know, if you really want to get into creating other materials, either A, you can hack the code or and implement that yourself, or, you know, you can go to a WordPress thing. You could do, you know, one of the hosted things. I'm trying to think of what some of them are, like Wix or something. So, but if you don't want to get into that, you know, if you're like, I don't know how big this is going to get, but I want to have a presence, but I don't want to, you know, churn up and put all the information into a Wix site and decide what template I should use. And the other thing is that when I was looking at like Wix and WordPress and stuff like that, there's very few that are simple to do without some knowledge and that are geared towards an app. So
I'll tell you what, the one thing that occurs to me, and I could be totally wrong, so I'm interested in what your ultimately what your results are. It seems like this is almost a back-end service type thing, right? Where I just kind of come to Crave Creative and I pick a theme and then I put my credit card information in and I put my ID in and boom, there's my landing page, right? And then
I've contemplated that because it would be, I mean, obviously it would be a little bit of work on my behalf to do, but it wouldn't be too horrible actually. Right. And what I could actually even do is if I did that, I would probably do like allow people just to use like a subdomain so they could have their own domain. I would kind of create a generic domain that would house everything and then create subdomains.
That would help a lot of these folks who don't have websites, don't have the money, the time, but they need some kind of support page.
Right.
Which I was laughing earlier when Charles said support page, how they always ask you, what's your support page? And I was laughing because I'm thinking, well, my support page is your data on my website. Thank you.
Right. So, yeah, this is, once again, I think if I was a more hardcore back-end coder, maybe I would have already went down that path because I thought about it, about creating an infrastructure where people could actually just log on, actually get their hosting from me, do like a subdomain type of a thing, or a virtual host type of a thing where they can actually buy a domain and I can just point it to the folder on my site.
You should consider it, Mike. If you could make that something first of all, if you could achieve it and make it something that people could afford relatively easily, and then it wouldn't cost you too much, make a good ROI on that. I mean, I think really turn a quick dime on that.
Well, here's the way my brain works. You do a monthly, right? A low cost monthly. So it's, $5 a month or something. I don't know. And then you do what everybody else does. And that's you provide them suggested services, right? So certainly they're going to need, XYZ service. And whenever they click the link to go check out that service, that's your affiliate link or whatnot, or, you pass the business to somebody else and the business services the client, but you make the referral fee, that kind of thing. So.
Yeah. And I've, like I said, I've kind of thought some of that is just really, it starts to get a little hairy for me as far as the, figuring out that back-end coding and making it, reasonable, how much time it would take me to do it. And then I believe there's a market for it, but it's a matter of, it's like anything. It's just like the apps. It's how do you reach that market?
And it's not just the Corona community, man. Forget about that.
Yeah, this is potentially everybody who's making apps. Now, I will say, and then I put this on my website, but this is predicated that it has to be an iTunes app. I made it so you can put a link to your Android one, but it only pulls from iTunes. So if you only have an app on Android and you don't have it published to iTunes, then you wouldn't want to buy this.
Is there not a way to pull that information in?
Believe it or not, they do not. Google does not have a API to pull information.
They're saying we're Google. Just Google us.
Yeah, and I don't know the reason. I was kind of surprised. I actually expected, when I looked into it, I expected to find the opposite. I expected Google to have it and iTunes not to. I did find some people who had some Git repositories where they were parsing out pages and trying to pull the information out of the HTML. But that's obviously painful as soon as Google changes anything.
Right.
So I decided just to say, well, screw that. I'm not going to mess with that. I'll just do it.
How's that again?
Yeah. Anytime you get into scraping pages or whatever to get the information, you're really living on the edge there, because as soon as anything changes, right? I mean, one character changes, you're toast.
Right. And, it's could be bad enough if Apple changes, the information or the format of the information that they push out that I'm grabbing. Hopefully they won't. Hopefully they'll just add to the information, but you don't know.
Well, yeah.
And this also works for whether you have just iPhone images. So if it's an older app that you haven't updated, it should work. It'll work for TV OS. For basically anything on iTunes, that's an iTunes app of sorts that has an ID.
So even music and all of those.
Well, not music. I didn't do it for music. Music, I don't know that music actually has an ID necessarily. I don't know what they call side of things. But
because I'm picturing, so you've got your. We just talked about having, we're going to go to your website and put my credit card information in and put my ID and all that stuff like that. And there's that side of it, right? And I've got a landing page that I can hand out and put on, give to Apple and that sort of thing. But then I was thinking, well, now you've got these all these paying customers kind of collected together, right, in a database. Now you put together. I wouldn't want to say a store because that would really tick Apple off. But you could put together a directory, what's that? Who's the guy that we interviewed a long time ago? He's got what?
Jim.
Yeah.
That's it. Put me on the spot.
I know that guy that was in that movie with that girl. You don't know what I'm talking about. I can't remember at the moment, and I apologize.
More words. You're not giving me enough data.
Yeah, well, there's a guy that's from Boston. He put together a website. I can't remember the name of it. That's the problem. If I remember the name of it, I wouldn't be having this problem. Yeah. Anyway,
okay, I'm gonna go look it up. Give me a second.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I could probably just Google it because I know we've interviewed him. But anyway, he has a site where people can go list
their. Site where people listed their games in advance and afterwards.
Yes.
Yeah,
they could get community feedback, and then the community could.
He had a whole mechanism for people to try it before it was released, and the whole deal.
Yeah, so he had all that, which each one of those apps had a landing page, and then he pulled it all together into a community, directory, and then he had on the back end he had services. They was like, hey, you need a trailer created, we have a service for that, right? So it's kind of the same thing we were just talking about a moment ago, but but he's got a little different spin on it. This would just be sort of landing page. It would just be straight up sort of services, right? Just like.
Right. Yeah, the other thing I thought of was also spinning this out is, let's say you have making a version that you could for multiple apps. Obviously you could just take this and throw them into different folders and then buy domain names that point to those folders on your web server. But I also thought it wouldn't be too horrible to make a version that basically allows you to put in, multiple IDs, app IDs, and then created basically like a home page that maybe had the icons or whatever, I figured something out that showcased the different ones, and you could navigate to the individual pages for those apps.
So here's what I'm thinking, right? You they put in their app ID, but then you're an affiliate for iTunes, and then so that link that's up there is actually an affiliate link, right? So
my goodness. It's funny because I have an affiliate account, and I didn't even think about that. I could have.
Yeah,
I could have obviously put in my affiliate information and begin those.
And now you build a recommendation engine that says people who bought this app also like this app.
Now I don't know. I don't know if that would feel kind of yucky to people. Like they buy something and then I'm under the radar grabbing.
You
potentially
just put in a checkbox that they can remove if they want to.
I guess it's true. You could just give them away
to the end users a license agreement. Everybody reads that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Just turn it on. Turn it on by default. Turn it on by default, and then give them an option to turn it off. That's the way the government does it.
Yeah. So anyway, but it has some basic features, and so I don't know. I'm trying to decide. I'm trying to get it listed on a couple websites that do templates, and I don't know if I can get a little traction. I guess I'd like to know really what I think in general interest is, or because it's kind of cool and works well doesn't mean that, and we think that there's interest.
Well, it's definitely a product, and the product has to be sold, right? So there's definitely that part of it. So